All right, take it away, guys.
I guess I'll go first. So I'm Ray. I'm a fifth-year computer science and media arts major. I am the events coordinator for Cosmo, and my fun fact on the slide was that I missed like 6 flights, which is really bad.
Hi everyone, I'm Jen. I'm also a fifth-year computer science and media arts major. Technically, I'm the treasurer for Cosmo, but lately we have not been spending much money on our events. But I also do the design work for Cosmo as well. I don't have a fun fact, but maybe my fun fact is I live with Raymond.
Hi everyone, my name is Anusha. I'm a second-year computer science and business administration major. I'm the mentorship chair for Cosmo, so I'm kind of in charge of running our mentorship program. And my fun fact is that I speak 5 languages.
Before we go forward really quick, we also have a bunch of Oasis mentors. If you're one of the Oasis mentors, if your video's on, if you could just like give a wave. They all usually have like the Oasis background too. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. So now that you guys know a little bit more about us and who we are, I want to talk about what Cosmo is. So we're founded on these 3 values of mentorship, collaboration, and community. And we try to focus all of our events against or with one of these 3 values. So in terms of mentorship, we really have our mentorship program where we pair first year and second year students with an older Corey student who's completed at least 1 co-op. And this is just a great resource for learning more about computer science, what the different areas in computer science are, because it is such a broad field, and just learning more about the co-op process and really acclimating to Corey, like Chris was saying before. For collaboration, we like to host different workshop events where you can just get an introduction to different things that are available in computer science, and we have tech discussions. And for community, we really like to have some social events just so you can meet other people in computer science. We really like to make a fun environment where you can just feel relaxed after all your classes and just get to know other people.
Thanks so much. And I believe Cosmo is closed for this semester, right? For registering as a mentee.
Yeah, so for registering as a mentee, we are closed for the semester. However, the club is still open to everyone, so you can come to our meetings anytime. They're Thursday at 7 p.m. and they're open to all members, so regardless of the mentorship program.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you're interested in that, in our follow-up email, we'll send a little bit more info about Cosmo.
So for the agenda for today's front-end development workshop, we're going to first start about talking about some important terms, why you should use frameworks or React, and how do we create front-end apps. And then we're going to break for questions and get right into the workshop and creating our first React app. So let's start with some basic terminology so you really understand what front-end and all these terms really mean. So what's a web app? So a web app is an app that runs on the web. So instead of being on your hard drive, it lives on a remote server. So you don't need to worry about installing or any updates, and it's just a lot more convenient. And what is the front end? So most applications have 2 parts. There's a front end and a back end, and the front end is what really renders the user interface. So when you go on a website, you're seeing the front end, and that's what you're working with. So the buttons, the text, the images. And how front end really works is when you visit a website, a request is sent to the server, and this returns the code needed to actually display or render the page. And it's also known as the client side of development. And just so you have a little bit more information when you contrast front end and back end is the controls and logic and data behind the scenes. So this is what actually makes all the buttons function, and this handles how you send and receive the website, any data, transactions. So this interacts with the front end to send and receive data. So when you click on something, it sends data to the back end, which actually creates the function, and this updates the front end of the website, and then you get the page that you were expecting to see. But you are going to be learning more about this later. And finally, what's a framework? So a framework is code that someone else wrote to make it easier for you to write. So this is more powerful, it's fault tolerant, clean, and this adds a layer of abstraction over just a vanilla language, so such as JavaScript. And frameworks have their own syntax, so you do have to learn a little bit more when you're working with frameworks. So I guess it kind of could be like its own language, but it's really meant to be compatible with the front end languages that we already have. And why do we use frameworks as opposed to just using JavaScript? This makes it much easier for us to keep our application data, which would be the model, in sync with the view. So the model view controller ideology is something you're going to learn a lot more about if you take OOD in the future. And this basically just keeps everything working together and working in sync. And these allow you to create powerful reusable components as opposed to hard coding everything and having to just create something from scratch every single time you want to use some functionality. And it helps provide some more direction for how to structure your application across many different files. So before I pass it on to Ray, I want to talk about my experience in Cosmo. So since I am a second year student, I don't have experience being a mentor yet since I haven't completed a co-op, but I joined Cosmo last year. And I was a mentee last year, and my mentor was a fifth-year student. And since I'm a combined major, I was always more interested on the product management side and learning about the intersection of computer science and business. So she was actually taking a full-time job as a product manager, and I was able to learn a lot more about that field. And when you're a mentee, this is really like the type of exposure we want you to have, understand more about different areas of computer science and just go beyond your horizons or what you think computer science traditionally is. I also got to learn a lot more about web development. So I had no web development experience prior to joining Cosmo, but we decided to redesign our website completely. So I got a lot more exposure. I got to learn JavaScript, CSS, learned to use the React framework. And we now opened up our website redesign to all our members. So we encourage anyone to contact us if you want to contribute to the website. There's still a lot of work to be done on it, and we're excited to see if anyone wants to contribute to it.
Great. So I'll be taking over here. How do we create front-end applications? So you can make a full web app with just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript without using any frameworks or anything. There are lots of advantages to this. It's lightweight, and you don't need to learn a framework. Lots of people know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's kind of like the first stepping stone in web development, but it does have limitations. It's difficult to handle user input, update pages, and reuse code. And oftentimes, frameworks have solved a lot of common problems that are in the web development process. Yeah. So we can use a framework or a library or both to get superpowers in our app. And so this allows you to build apps a lot more quickly. Yeah, but it has limitations as well. You have to learn the framework and whatnot. Yeah. So in my experience, so my first co-op was actually doing front-end development, and I actually did learn React. I think learning React is something, Jen will talk about this more, but React is a very common framework, and it's something that you can kind of just whip out whenever you need to build a web interface. And there's just so many resources available. So I think learning React was really a huge milestone in becoming more being able to build out my own ideas. It kind of creates a launching point for my own projects. So that's the main way that I've used React in my day-to-day life outside of co-op.
Hi, so let's learn how. So there are a lot of JavaScript frameworks such as React, Angular, Vue, but React is really the most popular one and the one that a lot of people tend to use in industry and on when people go on co-op. So that's what we're going to focus on. Um, React is an open source project that was released in 2013 by Facebook. It is a front-end library for building UI components. Why learn React? There are a lot of resources to learn React, so it's easier to get started, and also a huge community with constant development so that you'll be able to reach out to the people that might have expertise in anything that you're trying to do. And it can be used for really small projects or really huge applications, which I can talk about in my experience with React. So why did I learn React and how do I feel it has helped me as a developer? My first exposure to React was actually at my first co-op, but it was kind of just like a side project. I did the create app, React app tutorial. And then when I actually first used it to do an actual project was in my HCI class, my human computer interaction class. And there my group mates had a lot more experience than me. So I was just getting my feet wet and learning JavaScript and things like that. But also at my last co-op, I used Vue.js, which is another front-end framework. And really all of the front-end frameworks are pretty similar. So I was actually able to pick up React on the side to work on a lot of side projects for hackathons and also my own personal website. I feel that it's helped me as a developer more so because it's just another tool to add to my tool belt, as well as a designer. It's having the front end exposure helps me a lot to be able to design for like component reuse and really think about how I can design like web pages or apps for the people that are building the product.
Well, and that's pretty much it for our intro to the front end. Thanks, guys. We just wanted to give you all kind of like an intro to like what the front end even is and why we use it before we actually start developing React, because that's super important to understand before we just start writing this code. Does anyone have any questions about anything that was just talked about? It could be. I think there's a question in the chat here.
I can take this if I have a strong opinion. There's no place in the school's curriculum that is taught React because I feel like Northeastern, especially the CS curriculum is really focused on like designing and knowing how to pick up these tools rather than learning these tools to be used in industry, because like things like React will come and go, even though it has been around for a relatively long time and it is relatively popular. There will always be like a next framework. So the school's curriculum is really focused on knowing how to pick up these tools and how to teach yourself these tools and things like that.
And like I mentioned, I worked on, a lot of people have worked on React as like their very first co-op. And I think it's a testament to how the curriculum prepares you for co-op, because like I feel like after OOD and Algo, I was already performing kind of. I was able to pick up React really quickly because Northeastern's curriculum kind of prepares you to be flexible like that. So yeah, I totally agree.
Should I try to learn a framework or use Vanilla.js to create a project first? That's really up to you and like the size of your project. If you think your project is going to need a lot of components and a lot of code reuse, I would go for a framework because I think like vanilla JS is pretty easy to pick up once you get used to the syntax. It's like a mixture of a bunch of other languages, and the syntax really isn't that tricky. So it's really up to you. But I mean, I learned JS as I picked up a framework. So
I also think it also depends on where you kind of are in your CS curriculum, because I think if you've gotten around to learning like object-oriented programming, and you're maybe like taking Fundies 2 or OOD or something, it can be helpful. Frameworks can be a really great way to learn, both like to practice object-oriented programming and also learn web development, because a lot of it will be building on like your knowledge of classes and whatnot. But if you're in Fundies 1 and you don't know what that means, don't worry about it.
yeah. What do you find is the most common framework? I still believe that like React is probably most popular, but it's also surprising because I think a lot of older-ish companies, I don't want to say old because they may be like 5 years old, use Angular because it was like really popular in its heyday, and also you can use it with TypeScript, which I know a lot of companies like to use. I think Vue is gaining a lot of traction recently because you can use it with TypeScript just for like security and things like that, but also like the fan base around Vue is very passionate. But yeah, I think those three are definitely the most popular.
Cool. We got time for probably a couple more minutes of questions. If anyone has any, remember about like the content or about Cosmo.
For people who learned React on co-op, did you feel like not knowing it was a disadvantage during co-op search? Or were employers willing to teach you? Employers are definitely willing to teach you because they know like it's something that you can pick up on the job, especially a lot of companies that have partnered with Northeastern for co-op in the past know that students don't really have a hard time picking up a new language or a new framework. But I have never I haven't really found that it was a disadvantage not knowing a front-end framework. I don't know, Anusha, if you want to add, or Raymond.
Yeah, I can jump in here really quick. So I'm in the co-op search process right now, and just looking at even now with everything, how there's constant change, but even now the jobs, when the requirements for them are most that you know principles. So they're looking that you know object-oriented design, which by the time you are going to be in the process, you will have a good understanding of it because you would have taken OOD. And it's not so much language based. As long as you're comfortable with one language, they're usually happy. Um, in terms of React specifically, I have seen that some companies are asking for familiarity with React, but that really just means that you have been exposed to it and you did some outside learning. Familiarity doesn't mean that you are 100% comfortable making a full project on your own with it. So definitely, like even after this workshop, if you go and explore it a little bit, that's more than enough for what you would need for co-op search.
Yeah, definitely. And to follow up on that, other than this workshop, how can you recommend picking up the basics? The React documentation, I think, has a lot of resources on how to get started on your first project. So that's always a good place to start, although we're going to kind of be going through that in this workshop. The school also has access to like LinkedIn Learning or lynda.com. I forget what it's called now, but those like video tutorial things online are also really helpful.
Yeah, and I would say like a great way to just dive into it is kind of coming up with an actual like thing that you might need or want to have, so that you have like a goal in mind, but not to worry about it too much, because like having direction is great, but you also don't want to spend too much time like thinking about it to the point where it prevents you from diving into the code, because you're gonna be able to make so many things. You don't want you want to just dive into that first project to really kick off that learning process.